Good evening. This is Dharmendra Gordon. This is Vegan Synergy Meditation Meeting number 15. And tonight I'm going to start by sharing the theme for tonight's meeting, which concerns the fourth life code. In the traditional I Ching, the fourth life code is, it's called the fourth gate, but I specifically call it the life code, and you'll find out why as we move along. It's the hexagram of youthful folly. In the human design system, it's called the gate of formalization. And through the lens of the gene keys, the spectrum of consciousness of this key ranges from the shadow of intolerance to the gift of understanding and to the siddha, which is related to the higher self of forgiveness. The gist of this life code is to find an answer to the issue you're facing that is logical, which in this case means it can be substantiated and sustained in real life events as a practicable solution. Starting with the shadow of intolerance, it would seem that Mother Nature is no longer going to be tolerating the vast majority of mankind's participation in all the atrocities making up the daily animal holocaust that through mass consumption is being driven by corporate greed and perpetuated by the mass media and governmental subsidies. This is nature's way of rebalancing the results of humanity's negative effect against life in general and the environment. Some people, fortunately, will begin to wake up as a result of this crisis, turning their life upside down. Hopefully, they will connect the dots and start to realize that the taking of life through any and all forms of animal exploitation in order to satisfy one's greedy little appetites is at best a mistaken practice based on false views about reality, and at worst the very means of our own self-destruction through the spread of dis-ease which is happening right now on the planet through the coronavirus. As awakening occurs in those individuals who start to understand the harmful effects of their participation in the daily animal holocaust, and they start to avail themselves of the information being disseminated through all kinds of media exposing the truth about animal ag and all other forms of animal exploitation, they begin to re-examine everything about their life in relation to whether it harms or supports other forms of life, the environment, and their fellow humans. They begin to make life choices based on their newly emerging holistic view of life, the world, and humanity. This shift from the shadow to the genius in this life code is marked by the understanding that the way one is choosing to live one's life has consequences, not only for oneself, but for other life forms, the environment, the economy, political influences, cultural trends, etc. It slowly dawns in one's consciousness that the more one practices peacefulness in their thoughts, words, and deeds, and that implies a vegan lifestyle involved in climate healing activities, all in harmony with the awakening of humanity into a vastly improved enactment of their collective existence. The more that peacefulness starts to overflow into loving kindness towards all other forms of life. You cannot help but start to give of your time, your energy, your resources, your space to the loving and caring for all sentient beings as you realize we are all interconnected as one incredibly beautiful web of life in this shared dance of existence, here and now on this planet. And before you know it, you have begun to embody one of the siddhas of your higher self as you come to realize that life is forgiving, which is one of the real meanings of forgiveness. We only need to be forgiven when we have done something that goes against the life code, that takes something away without giving anything in exchange that results in an imbalance. You correct the imbalance by giving, and begin the process of forgiveness with yourself. The more you give of yourself out of the understanding implicit to this life code, and not from a sense of guilt or any other negative emotion, the more you become a living example of the demonstration that life is forgiving. And slowly, you begin to understand the youthful folly of your fellow humans in regards to the daily animal holocaust, as you realize that in order to survive as a species, sooner or later we will all have to become vegan, as it is the only sustainable, truly loving, and compassionate, and aesthetically pleasing thing to do. Obviously, life is not sustained by destructive acts. Sooner or later, every human being has to realize that life is forgiving, which only makes sense since as we all started out by being given life in the first place. Pay it forward through everything you are, say, and do. Give of your life as it was given to you in the first place. That is the essence of what forgiveness means. And of course, that's my take on it. But that's the theme for this week as we move from intolerance through understanding to forgiveness. So, Lucy, you've done this before, so I'll invite you, if you feel like it, to maybe start out with a little sharing about intolerance and how it's impacting you in whatever way you feel like, from whatever, collective, universal, or individual, personal, whatever way you feel like sharing it. I'm going on.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it definitely all relates on many levels at the moment. Something that I've been working through myself this week, the last few days, is, I guess, an intolerance of is it intolerance or is it impatience? It's like intolerance of the passage of time. It's like this sense of urgency. I feel like I have to get these things done as soon as I physically possibly can, and impatient with myself and impatient with, yeah, pretty much myself for not being able to be able to do that, really, and just getting so kind of caught up in my head and getting stuck in that space of pushing and forgetting to breathe, forgetting to take a little bit of time here and there to just to observe and to be more aware of what's going on within myself and within the globally. And I did make an effort to observe to a certain extent, but not as much as I should have, really. Especially of myself, I think. So I know generally what's going on around the world, but there's just so much. There's so many different reports, so many different, they're trying to keep on top of all the different countries and what their decisions are every day. Like I can't keep on top of all of that, as well as everything that I'm doing and within myself, my own life and everything. So I have wanted to observe as much as possible, but just take in a certain amount, enough to be able to do the work and then keep going. But I haven't been, well, there was just a day or two where I really felt like I should have just sat back and observed a bit more, whereas I just kind of kept going. And I went with the flow of what I felt, like the adrenaline was just pushing me forward. But then I got to a point where it felt like I'd been sprinting for weeks and I had to just stop. My body was like, nah, just stop. just you're just gonna have to take a few hours. And then it turned into a day or two, and now I'm feeling a lot better now after pretty much Tuesday night, Wednesday morning my time. And I've been able to work through a lot of this stuff and really come to understand and forgive as well. So I'm working through this process over the last few days. It's definitely been that growth for me. And I see a lot more, well, that's understanding. Intolerance, I think, as you say, the planet itself, the universe has got to the end of its tether, really, of tolerating all the stuff that we've done to it and to ourselves and to each other. And yeah, intolerance of each other and intolerance of, within activism as well. Yeah, I might have more, but maybe if we cycle around through.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. That was really cool. You without even knowing it, you kind of jumped to the next week's theme. The fifth life code is impatience, patience, and timelessness.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, I mean, and then it follows after just the shadows of the next several. It goes from impatience to conflict to the army, which is it's that's the army's in the old I Ching, but it's interaction. So after conflict, we find out how to interact. Then we can start coming together. Then we can focus, and then it's behavior. Those are the next six, I think I said, of shadows, or not shadows, just the names of the gates. The shadows are very interesting because you go from impatience to conflict to division to mediocrity to inertia, and then to God, what is the last one? Oh, and then to self-obsession. So those are all the things. I have a feeling those things are going to be coming up more and more in people as we go along, because we really hit that creation point. I think I was really lucky to catch when a whole new wheel was going to turn, and that was like, what are we on, the fourth life code? So it was like 3 weeks ago, because it would have been a week ago would have been the third, 2 weeks would have been the second, and 3 weeks would have been the first, when I felt the creation process opened. At least with Vegan World 2026, which is one of the, major hubs on the planet of vegan activity, where a lot of people such as, of your kind of caliber of vegan activists are gathering and trying to, come together and take the best of all of us and move forward into something. So that was just an aside there based on what you were saying. But for me, the intolerance I mean, if I'm really honest, when I'm out there in the world and I'm at work or wherever, and whenever, and I can tell now before I even open my mouth to talk to somebody, I feel it in their frequency. If they're eating meat, I just feel it oozes in their aura. It oozes out of them, and I always, it's a little shudder that goes through me when I have to take in that energy. And it's that, to be honest, it's really become intolerable for me anymore to have to, I mean, I'll just be honest, I'll go totally into my shadow and say it's just intolerable for me anymore to share a planet with people who do this to other forms of life. It's just intolerable to be, that's what my body's telling me. A body that's peaceful, a body that just wants to a body made for giving, the Siddha, but we'll get there. That just wants to help, because I know how it feels when others, come in and bring beautiful things into my life. I would want that for all beings and nothing else, not the coming in and I mean, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like if somebody came into my house, chained me up, and then just, basically took whatever they wanted from my body for the rest of my life, as long as I could handle living. And then basically by the end of it, just what they do to animals, slit my throat, and that was it. Bye, you're done. Thanks. Now we're going to eat you. So it's intolerable to me. It's just, I really just, I just can't even really, but we have to be bigger than that. Obviously there's more to us than just that intolerable part, but I don't ever turn it off, because that's my meter that tells me, where I'm at with somebody. Because the bottom line is, if you're still eating meat, I don't care if you call yourself spiritual or not. In my opinion, and I put this out on Facebook at one time, and I have a lot of spiritual friends because I come from a very tense spiritual background. And I put it out one time, I said, do not pretend to be a spiritual teacher if you're still eating animals. Boy, did I get some harsh stuff back. But that explained everything to me. It's like, okay, you stay in your willful ignorance then. And I mean, you could pretend like you're teaching people, and maybe you're just teaching this little part over here, and the rest of that big nasty part of yourself that loves to kill and eat animals, you're just ignoring it, I guess, except for the taste, And so this is all just coming from out of that intolerance, and when I'm sort of describing behaviors, that's what happens when I get in that space. It really irks me. And the other thing is, I'm starting to even tell ordinary people just out in the world that I work with or whatever, because they're coming up to me now, because maybe because of this coronavirus, and they say, well, what do you think about all this? And it's a perfect segue into, well, guess how it started? And guess how human disease in the first place started, period. There's some beautiful videos out there by really radical doctors these days that are describing how the genesis of human disease in the pandemic forms that we have now was all about animals. It was all connected with animals and harming animals. That's where it started in us. So I'm having fun when I'm talking to ordinary people. After I give them a bit of a spiel, I say, so it's up to you. What's more important, your taste buds or your children's future? And they look at me and they cringe and they go, God, did you have to say it like that? I said, yeah, I did, because that's the way it is. That's what's happening. That's what's happening on the planet right now. It's either you and your freaking taste buds, your all holy taste buds, or your child's future. Which one do you choose? Because if you keep going with the other one and that's it, then we're all, we're out of here. There ain't no way we're going to get through all this. So anyway, that's instead of really describing how it affects me, I just got into it, and I'm talking from this is my intolerance talk. It's not really the best and most effective way to put it out there, but that's how it feels. And some of it is useful, like your taste buds or your children's future. That to me is a critical one. So yeah, and it just comes from a deep feeling of hurt and sadness that I feel for all the animals, because I feel that all the time too. It's just there. So Ellie, I'm gonna well, it looks like I think you have sound now, Ellie, on your Zoom. If you wanted to share anything about the intolerance and relate as the way we're describing it this evening, please go ahead. I'll unmute your phone too. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Okay, now you can hear me. I have a little unmute button, but it's doing nothing. It's up to you to unmute me or mute me.
Oh, okay.
So I was hoping in that, can I call it a rant of yours? It seemed like a little bit of a rant that you were going to pull it around back to forgiveness, because
not yet.
That was
not yet.
Was the topic.
We have a sequence. Everybody goes through intolerance. Then I'll share how we can transform that into understanding, because there's a process. And then once we all go through understanding, then we'll all go into, and you'll see why when we get to forgiveness, because it's so much fun when we get to siddhas. So I save it for last, and we all get to go into it one at a time together, and then all at once. But right now we're just we don't slip into other spaces unless it happens naturally. But right now we just stay with intolerance, because it really helps.
Intolerant of, okay, we'll go to forgiveness later. Okay.
Yeah, how intolerance has impacted you in the last week, let's say. Just where have you been with that, what you see in the world, or how you are with it, or how it's affecting you, or if you're going through it. Okay, done. Go ahead.
Okay, can I go? Yeah, I wanted to briefly say that I joined Vegan World 2026 about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4, but I was just lurking at first to see what kind of community you all were. And then I started, the learning curve of base camp and trying to figure out where, if anywhere, I wanted to get involved. And in the last week, it's really taken off. Ray gave me a little tutorial, and I met with the VCI group twice. They meet weekly, and they are trying to be the collective intelligence representing, they say, the whole of Vegan World 2026, no matter how big it gets. It's getting big already. It's 22 different study groups and circles, and I wanted to participate maybe in like 11 or 12 of those 22. They sounded interesting, and Ray has that questionnaire where you ask, what's your role? What's your contribution, or where do you think you'll have fun contributing? And so I jumped right in to about 11. I'm not shy, but I'm a little sensitive, maybe. Some people call me oversensitive to words that can be interpreted different ways. So I felt a little unwelcomed in a couple of those groups, and they actually blamed it on me for being intolerant to their processes, that I didn't know how it was going, and I had to observe for 3 or 4 weeks before I could say anything, and I was intolerant of that onboarding process of welcoming newcomers. They say, welcome to all, open to all, and everybody's equal and let's all contribute, but then they say pretty much what I heard as shut up and listen for 3 or 4 weeks before you can participate. And so I kind of did that here too. I waited and watched some of your videos and read your intros to each week and kept resonating really highly with this group and a couple other groups where I am a lifelong vegan. I'm 55 and I've been a vegan for 55 years, as long as parents and other controlling people let me. And I am a wildlife biologist, so I have an intolerance always that I'm working on always with people who not are carnists, but are open-minded to learning about why would I want to be vegan when I can be an omnivore. Then you teach them and they're open and you share, and I learn from them almost as much as I teach them. I've been a biology teacher and had to share with people who wanted to do dissections that they can do dissections on the computer, and then why kill if you don't have to kill? And some of them are the hunter types who say because we can, because we evolved that way. And I have these discussions with people who you might call carnists, who I was wondering where, the forgiveness comes in. It's not really, well, let me bring it back to the circles. When I got involved in these circles here, the 2 or 3 different circles that I really feel I can contribute to, like the end of animal agriculture and the rewilding or nature stewardship of certain ecosystems. As we heal the earth, we're healing the climate and the land and the animals, and we're just another animal. I have a lot of knowledge and experience to share, but I always come at it like we're all equal teachers, learners, and I have an intolerance for people who seem to be either one or the other strictly, like, oh, teach me, old wise one, and I won't say anything because you're older and wiser than me, or the opposite of shut up, newcomer, you're not ready to participate in our process yet. And I got a lot of that, people are different and communicate in different ways. So I had to check in with myself really often about which directions to go and which ones to participate in, and how to feel good about contributing and make new connections with new equals and a new community. It feels like now, after a week of that sort of, maybe it's not worth getting involved in. I've been involved in a lot of different vegan groups along the way of my animal activism, is more successful alone. I was a veterinarian. I can heal animals and rescue them from whatever abuses better alone, at least up until a few years ago. I'm losing physical strength. So then you realize you need community and you can't do it alone. And we can't certainly change the world to vegan in 5 or 6 years alone. We have to convince people. So it's more of a community effort now with the climate change urgency that I've felt growing and growing for a long, long, long time. I've actually been a part of a modeling group that tried to warn about the dangers of climate change pollution in the late 80s, early 90s, but people don't listen, and even now they don't listen. And I'm sort of on the Greta Thunberg bandwagon of we have to just keep saying it like it is, which maybe you meant you were doing when you tell people look, your kids' future lives is at stake. But if you say that now during the coronavirus, when people are calling it the Chinese virus and not the wild bat virus, they're calling it the Chinese virus. They're blaming the Chinese people as a whole huge culture that's bigger than us, more polluting than us, eats a lot more animals than us. And we could blame them for all that, but we can't. You know, realistically, we have to forgive and join with and educate how, show them a better way. And telling them their kids might die of this coronavirus is just too scary in your face. I think it's scaring them away and harming their, I don't know the spiritual terminology really, but their
Hey, Ellie, can I jump in? Ellie, can I jump in for a minute? Okay, in this
Sure.
in this meeting, we each share from our own experience what it is
we're
that
intolerant of.
what we're intolerant of. But if we start trying to tell somebody else what they're doing and how it's affecting others without really understanding that person and where they're coming from and why they shared that way, which is what you're doing in relation to me right now, because I said clearly that I was coming from an intolerant space and I was going to express it, and I knew it was shocking, and that was the purpose of it, was to show that intolerance is a shadow. So I was using myself as an example to express intolerance and how it affects others. You were right in observing.
What do you mean by a shadow? What's a shadow?
A shadow is that place in yourself that is subconscious. It's not fully conscious, and it usually drives your behavior, and it was usually rooted in your behaviors as a child when you were shut down by your teachers, your parents, the police, whoever, when you were doing something, just being yourself, and somebody came up to you and said, no, stop that, you're not allowed to do that. That begins the shadow, right? That begins the shadow right there, and you start hiding things down inside yourself, repressing them, holding them back.
So I was trying to say how I my shadow is feeling unheard and being intolerant of the people who are telling me to shut down. So I do.
Beautiful. That's right on. That's exactly what we do here, what you just did. That's it. And you nailed it in a sentence. I love it when people could just nail it in a sentence, because that's really all. I like to spend more time with our genius and our higher selves, because the shadow is kind of like this. It's kind of, and everybody, you know, has to get into a space where we either share what we see in the world that isn't pleasing to us, or like me, you can actually enact it, and then everybody goes, geez, that's a little intense. And it is, but that's what shadows are. They are intense, and they're not appropriate. And it's not the best thing in the world to go scare people by telling them that, but that's what our shadows do. There's nothing we can do about it. But I really appreciate the way you just came across with that, Ellie. That was really, that's how you do a shadow. So for me, I'm just intolerant when people continue to stay in their willful ignorance, even though they've been told that this is the way it is, and they still they still insist on being willfully ignorant and doing things that harm others. So that's where my intolerance lies at the moment. So is there anything else anybody else would like to share? And it was nice to hear about your background too, Ellie. I like all the stuff that you've done. Your life sounds pretty neat, pretty cool. Is there anything else you wanted to say about your shadow, Ellie?
Well, I would like a little more about the process of how we work through those shadows. I'm sure we all have many.
Yes.
But we're focusing on one each week.
Yes.
And from your tapes of the other, I've only listened to 2 out of the 3 previous meditations. But so can you remind me of the process of how we come through?
Sure. I'll do it by jumping into the next step, because it sounds like we're ready to go to the genius stage of the meditation. So I'll just jump into understanding, and I'll sort of it's something that, instead of my explaining it, what I allow people to do, because I've discovered in the last 2.5 decades of doing this with people, in groups like this, that if I demonstrate it, and then somebody who's maybe done it at a time or two before also demonstrates it, then you basically catch it. You just kind of catch it. You kind of get the hang of it, because I really don't want to tell other people really, because in the end it becomes my opinion of how to do it the right way. So and I like that you asked the question. So it gave us some space to kind of open up how it occurs. But I'll just share my shift from intolerance into understanding and the way I go about it. And then Lucy can share hers if she's okay with that after me, and then you can just jump in and give it a shot. It's really about this is really the school of jump into the water and swim. I'll jump in first so you can see what happens. But I find that people, when they learn that way, it is a little bit, how do you say it? Not scary, but it's just a little bit like, whoa, you mean I got to just do it just like that without any real, yeah, you do, but you'll at least be given a couple of good examples of how it's done from different people. But I want each person to come in with their own uniqueness, their own unique contribution, their own individuality, their own exquisite individuality. Because then it allows us to connect so much more deeply when each person is not shut down and not told, that you got to be a certain way. And, we don't do any sociocracy here. It's all open. It's all open. Everybody's their own boss. And the deeper we go into this, the more you awaken, the more we accelerate our consciousness, the more you're capable of being totally responsible for yourself in this meeting. So I find that the meeting is structured in such a way that people just get it. You don't have to make up rules. You only need rules when you don't really know what you're doing. And you only don't know what you're doing if really at the root of what you're doing is not based in waking up. I mean, if you wake up, then you're going to see what's going on around you. You're going to figure it out. That's how our ancestors did it in the beginning. They woke up in an environment and they figured it out. It may have taken them a while, but we get all that knowledge plus whatever we got now to add to it. So we can take that wakefulness into a meeting like this and all behave accordingly, and just and as people demonstrate how the meeting goes, it's just, and we don't have to have times where, okay, it's 2 minutes, you stop, now it's the next person's turn. All that stuff is for other kinds of meeting. This kind of meeting is the most deepest respect for each person's individuality, and each person sharing who they are and where yes, we use themes, we do stuff, but those 64 themes are our genetic codes. And they're the best interpretations. So I've borrowed from the best interpretations we have to this date from the best minds in the world that have worked on that stuff of our genetic code. So it's who we are. It's what makes us up. It's what determines our behaviors, our ways of thinking and stuff based on gazillions of years of evolution. And I think that if we get to know who we are, and we can open that up and share it and become familiar with ourselves in a group environment where it accelerates our understanding because we get it from different angles. Each person has a slightly different angle on the theme. We grow so much more quickly. And then as a side effect, we just become more proficient in our lives. So I hope that a little bit starts to maybe invite you in a little more, Ellie, to what we're doing. And with that, I'm just gonna, that's really my way of stepping out of intolerance into understanding. I'm sharing, I just did it, demonstrated it, because I always like to, when, instead of just give an answer and say, this is what understanding is, and if you look it up in the dictionary and go from there, rather than do that, I would rather jump into a space where I can share something with you and then understanding happens. Because to me, the best way to really get things across is to create the space where that very thing is happening, instead of, because then it's not about it, it is it. So this is understanding. I'm sure that a lot of what I've shared with you right now probably has given you a little bit deeper understanding, and possibly even you, Lucy, you've done this before, I don't know, but a little more understanding of what we do in these meetings. I certainly hope that people watching this later will get a little more understanding from the things I just shared about how we proceed in these meetings. And a lot of times in the meetings in the past, I would reveal a lot more stuff, but what I found is that's just verbal information. So I'm just going to keep each step moving along, and when we get to the siddha, then we'll do the siddha. So that's, for me, the understanding comes when, and I'm able to share it when I realize that what I'm intolerant about, if I come from that space of intolerance toward another person and I put myself in their shoes, and they have to receive my intolerance, am I really going to learn anything from that person if they're trying to teach me something? Probably not. What I'll probably get is they don't really dig where I'm coming from about the things they're telling me about, and I need to do better and I need to improve. But I don't really get that that person is receiving me where I'm coming from. They're not sensitive to the fact that I was raised in the tradition of eating meat. My husband eats meat. I don't know how I'm going to stop. I got kids. How am I going to stop eating meat when my husband does it? My kids do it. What am I going to do? And I'm really giving a real life situation without naming names. So instead of doing that, to back up and come into the situation a little differently, um, from my understanding, and then just share. Did you know that the genesis of all human disease comes from animal agriculture, comes from man's interaction with animals in a not beneficial way, in a way where man was trying to take something from the animal, whether it was initially from killing an animal because he found that the inside the bone marrow was something that healed a certain disease. But even that's just, okay, so we healed a disease, but we took an animal to do it. So in the end, it's not really a win-win situation. And so if I can start maybe to come into in such a not so in the face way, but more of an in general way that includes us all, and we understand that, well, maybe animal agriculture is contributing to all these pandemics, all these human diseases, because apparently in our history, what we found is that animal pandemics originally, human disease pandemics originally came from the way we interacted with animals in a very selfish and unloving way, where we just took from animals. And so maybe starting from there, I could see that that would be a way to shift out of that shadow of intolerance, and then just to there's another human being in front of me, and if I just forget for a moment, whether they eat meat or not, and I just say they got a heart like I got a heart, and at one time I ate meat too. So now I realize, let he who's without guilt cast the first stone, or however that goes. I can't remember. I'm not Christian, but I know that everybody's guilty. So it's like, including me. So who am I to be so intolerant of this person when I at one time somebody must have been loving toward me, and it shared it with me in such a way that it helped me make the shift. Or I did it on my own, but sooner or later I met people who probably supported me in taking further steps and gaining courage about how I express my my veganism and my animal activism. So so I really like what you did earlier, Ellie, in the way that you took a bit of your intolerance toward my intolerance, and the way I was expressing it helped me to adjust a way that because I was going to go into the understanding a little differently, but because of what you shared, Ellie, it helped me to orient it in a way where I could share understanding with the person and literally put myself in their shoes and go, how would I want to hear this, so I could start to understand what this person is trying to tell me about the negative consequences of animal agriculture on my on my body and what it does to my body. So thank you for that. I'm going to leave it at that as a demonstration, a little bit different way to move from an intolerant space about this issue, which is all kind of in the field of viruses and influenzas and things like that, and shifted it into understanding. So I'm gonna, if you would feel like going next, Lucy, again, that would be great to bring about your understanding and shift from intolerance.
Yeah, thank you. Just related to my life and bring it back again to what I was saying. I guess just there's a beautiful level of understanding that I'm feeling now, like between you two and between us three. I feel, I'm not gonna like put that on you and tell you how to feel or anything, but I feel like there's a nice vibe which has come about through this kind of discussion. But yeah, just bringing it back to how I've processed things in the last week. I don't know if it really came from intolerance, but I did come to a level of understanding of where other people. Oh, hi, somebody else has joined us. Hi, Sarah. Understanding of the way I'm potentially perceived by other people who have their own thoughts and feelings and emotions and everything around this whole thing globally, and the way that they're now interacting with me or not interacting with me actually is more to the point, is the fact that I feel like I'm being completely ignored by people who I thought would be there for me and would check in on me. And I've been very surprised, pleasantly surprised in some ways, the people who have checked in on me, not people that I would have expected, but also very hurt by the fact that I have dedicated my life to making sure that other creatures, whether they're non-human or human, are okay. And I've been checking in on everyone, checking in on huge numbers of people, as groups and individually, to see how they're going, and very, very limited numbers of people have been checking in on me, and I've been very surprised at those who haven't. But I also am coming to an understanding of how they perceive me, I think, because, you know, potentially, well, non-vegans, and I'm not sure because I haven't heard from them. But I feel like maybe it's because I have been so vocal about this for so long. And I've been saying, you know, look at what we're doing, look at what's potentially going to happen. And maybe they feel like it is happening. I don't know if it's because they maybe see that maybe I was right in some ways, or if they don't want to talk to me because they feel like I'm going to tell them that I was right. But that's not how I feel like I am very tolerant in general, very much more tolerant of, you know, non-vegan family and friends that I could have completely disowned, or, you know, yeah, it's been a process seeing how they are or they aren't interacting with me, and seeing the ones who actually are coming forward and making sure that I'm okay, not people that I've been expecting. And I'm understanding, I think, more of how they perceive me, and more of how the others who aren't checking in on me, how they perceive me as well. So, yeah, and then my perception of myself as well is kind of coming back full circle to where I was a few weeks ago, because I've forgotten my own self-care and my own self-love, which is exactly what I'm doing with my organization, is very much based on self-love and building our resilience so that we can be more effective and more efficient and achieve more as activists in the long run. Because I think this is going to be, yeah, the next few years are going to be very challenging, and we have to learn how to communicate, and we have to learn how to work through all of this stuff. And this is why I think this is so important, the gene keys and these processes of coming through from our shadow into our genius and then our higher selves. I think it's very important, for as many activists as possible to learn how to do that, and just be really conscious and considerate and compassionate. So this understanding and this process, for me personally, is I'm remembering, or I'm understanding myself more through what I'm experiencing through all of this, and focusing so much on my group, on Paradise Rising, and building it so that we can do all these things, so that we can achieve a vegan world as soon as possible, stop the exploitation. But remembering who I am in all of that as well, and understanding and loving myself through that. So yeah, then I can move into forgiveness when we're ready.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lucy. You made a really good point there. Hi, Sarah. I'll just say hi to you. I'm glad you could join. but yeah, about the resilience and you know, helping vegans to learn how to move from their center and stay centered and be essential and natural and real, because it's so draining and so challenging and so many other things and so horrifying what's out there in the animal ag world and all of it on our psyche and our hearts and our stamina and everything else. You know, that's what this meeting is about. I'm glad you're tuned into it too, even on your own. But that's what we do in this meeting, is we come back into this, into who we really are, looking at our reaction patterns, and then coming back and stepping into our hearts and seeing what we really want, and then making it in such a way that other people can also absorb that in us sharing who we are with them, instead of, so they don't feel alienated, but they feel like they're being given some understanding, then they can make a choice, you know. But then this meeting goes on and goes further than that when we get in touch with our higher selves, because it's also about meditation. It's not just about waking up the world and having everybody go vegan, which has to be at the root of all of it, but it's also about making the world more meditative, or it's not going to be a better place. It's just going to be the same old place, but now everybody's vegan. I'd like to see the same old place where everybody's vegan, but we're also being creative in all kinds of inconceived new ways, because that's what meditation does. It makes you more creative. The more silent you become, the more the more the opposite, the more the balance has to come out, and the more you have to extend into the world in peaceful, loving, incredibly creative ways, and make the world an incredible place for every being we live with here. So it's not just, let's just all be the same old people we've all, but that, I'm just kind of half being facetious and joking, because the minute you become vegan, you're a different kind of person. You start resonating at a different frequency. You're already much more attuned to what meditation is anyway. So I just wanted to kind of open up what you shared about being more resilient, because you just said being more resilient, and then to me there's that resilience has all kinds of other stuff in it that makes it very beautiful to have that whole other inner world to develop when you're trying to make the outer world a better place, and to free all beings from the suffering, the immense suffering that goes on in this planet with pretty much every form of life, thanks to those humans who you know, who can't help, I guess, but do that until they wake up a little bit more. Sarah, I just wanted to let you know that our theme tonight, we started with intolerance, and then now we're in the genius, we're in understanding, and I shared about how I acted out how I was being intolerant with non-vegans in kind of sharing in kind of intense ways this coronavirus, and it's the fault of all you meat eaters and stuff. But and I'll just use myself an example. Then I shifted out of that, and I saw a beautiful video today that Amira shared with me that I watched of this doctor who was explaining the genesis of human disease. Basically began, Lord knows how long ago, but it began with animal agriculture, when man started to take from animals. And once I got that, I had a different, I realized there was a whole different understanding I could share with people, instead of telling them, either choose between your taste buds or your child's future, which one's more important to you, because if you keep eating animals, your child ain't gonna have no future. That was my kind of, you know, heated, intolerant, like, you stupid person, Jesus, wake up, this is what you're doing. But it's not really the best way to say that, even though it might be true. So when I shifted into understanding, I kind of came from this place of, you know, I also know what this guy said in the video today about, I didn't know that the genesis of disease, I kind of suspected it, but I didn't know that the genesis of widespread human disease came from animal agriculture, like however long ago, thousands of years or whenever. So once I got that, then it reminded me of the interconnectedness of all life. And when we start to harm any part of life, it's going to start to harm other parts of life in the process. And so I was able to then go, okay, so if it was me receiving this teaching from a vegan, I would rather have that side that talked about the genesis of human disease than somebody saying, either you stop eating meat or your kids ain't got no future, you know? So that's kind of, and then Lucy shared, she was just sharing her side of understanding there as you came in. So I'm going to ask Ellie, because she's been with here since the beginning, if she's ready to share her understanding, or if she wants to wait. If not, then if you feel like sharing, you can go through intolerance, because you were sharing that a bit last week too, your intolerance of people not being vegan, and then you can jump into understanding. But let me ask Ellie first, because she was here before. Ellie, did you want to jump in with your understanding at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
And you don't I can hear you fine. You don't need to raise your voice. I'm okay. So I moved from we were talking about the intolerances that we've suffered and noticed this week, and mine were mostly around joining a new community, Vegan World 2026, and all the 10 or 15 sub-circles, I think they're calling them circles, that I wanted to be welcomed into. It was mostly good, but a little bit twinges of bad feelings, if I can generalize them that way. So the few bad feelings of, oh, I'm not welcome here, or I'm not able to contribute here, I better go try a different circle. That's my prey ancestor self. I'm a wounded horse, and I run away from a potential predator, even if they're not meaning to be a potential predator. So I shared before Sarah came on that I was accused at one point of being a little too oversensitive. And so my understanding evolving around that part of myself, maybe I am what others consider oversensitive, because I actually got scared by your example of that harsh warning. That's why I brought it up. I was feeling scared and feeling like, oh, I'm going to leave this meditation because it's not relaxing and it's not enlightening and it's not, you know, what I thought it would be. But it's never what you think it will be when you interact with another creative, unique human being, right? And I always prided myself on communicating well with other mammals, but I kept saying I can't communicate with the human mammal. It's just the one that boggles me, because I feel unheard, unrespected, unwelcomed to stay in the dual dialogue that becomes at all prickly or at all scary for me. I just run away and don't practice what I'm starting to understand I have to practice my whole life, and maybe we all do, the practice of really deep listening and hearing where the other person's coming from, and are they wanting to be in a dialogue right then of that sort? Is the dialogue becoming what some could consider violent instead of loving? And can we tune each other to the same loving vibe so that we feel more heard and we feel more like we're good listeners, want to be a good listener and a good speaker. So that energy vibe is, in the last week, became really exciting that in Vegan World 2026, they have unlimited storage on the unlimited World Wide Web, so that we can connect with everyone in every country for as long as we want. And that's why I was still amazingly checking in with all you organizers of these recorded circles, saying, don't we have a time limit? Don't we have to get off Zoom? Don't we have only 5 minutes each? Or, you know, what, I didn't mean the rules, but I meant the time limit, because technology is just leaping ahead of us, and I have to keep up. So I'm not an economist and I'm not a techno geek, even though I live near Silicon Valley, and I'm constantly interacting with what I call techno geeks. I have to be tolerant of their technological know-how that they sometimes whiz over my head without explaining to me. And then I have to be more tolerant of their lack of biological evolutionary know-how when I try and explain how we're all related and we're killing the climate, so we're killing all species, especially the mammals, and we're just a mammal and we're killing ourselves and other species. And it's more harmful to me to feel responsible for wiping out all those millions of other species than I feel responsible for wiping out the humans. But a lot of humans are more egotistical and egocentric, and so I have to change the vibe from save the elephants and whales to remember we're also saving us. And this primate is just wanting to save you and your family as well as the whales and elephants families. I'm proud of my biology, but I also have been resented for it a lot. And I left families, plural, behind when I went to live in Africa with the elephants for 5 or 6 years. I couldn't bring myself to come back because I knew I was coming back to these wars, famines, killings, that I couldn't do any more mercy vigils. I couldn't do any more quote unquote rescues that weren't effective enough at shutting down a whole CAFO or rescuing every single animal in a big factory farm. I just got impatient after living in the quiet solitude of the African savannas. It's not solitude at all. There's 22 hooved species, 5 proto-ungulates like elephants and rhinos, and 6 or 7 big predators all running around eating each other. And I found that so relaxing to be almost the only human for days and months and miles, because I have this fear, I think, of most humans becoming violent and killing each other. I see it every day, and I cringe at it every day, and we kill each other. So I have to work on that, and I've come to the understanding that we are evolving as a species from hunter, predator to not prey, not having to run away from each other, but to wise, omnivore agrarians who don't need to farm animals. We can farm just plants and feed each other just fine and be in better health and loving connection with each other, of course, once we stop all the murdering and slaughtering. So I'm impatient for that. I have to deal with my impatience, and the more I understand about climate change, the more impatient I get, just like Greta and the young people who are seriously afraid they don't have a future. That's kind of true, and kind of we have to take the bad news with the good. There are only certain species we can save. I'm not at all convinced that we're one of them, but we'll of course try to be one of them. I want to save whole ecosystems so that the guilt is off my human shoulders as a fellow human, that we're trying everything we can try. So we put our heads together on Vegan World 2026 in all those channels for all those hours. I can't believe they have a 24-hour block party every Friday. I'm going to try and see what that's about tomorrow, but I've listened to some little bits of it. It's just like think tanking 24/7 all the time. We can think tank and put our ideas there for fellow vegans to handle gently and say, yeah, that's a great idea, and let's tweak it with this and that way, and maybe we change whole economies, maybe we change whole cultures and whole politics. It's a hopeful place to mostly think big. And so I'm glad I mostly felt welcomed. I'm working on the little tweaks of not feeling welcome and being unheard and told to basically shut up and go away. Those are partly from me and partly from how I heard them presenting what they wanted to present. I'm sure as we just have to take turns we've heard your idea. Now let us ruminate or speak on it. So I think that's enough.
Thanks, Ellie. That was, thank you for sharing your understanding. In listening to all of it and reflecting on it for a sec, I realize you really kind of did sort of share your experience of the intolerance, and then now as you're starting to get more familiar with it, what I get from what you said is that your understanding is growing about how the process works to be part of Vegan World 2026. So far. Okay, Sarah, is moving from intolerance, you can do both if you want, since you haven't done either one yet. If you feel like it, go from intolerance right into your understanding, how it transformed into understanding, however you want, using this last week as your field of, experience to draw from, to share that.
So my intolerance is still that the mainstream media refuses to talk about what the true cause of any type of outbreak is when it involves animals. And I still feel the same way. I like to refer to pre-vegans as pre-vegans rather than non-vegans, because I believe that everybody is pre-vegan in their heart. They just haven't aligned their actions with their beliefs because they are brainwashed and they are in the matrix. So I just met a recent vegan just a minute ago, and it was really nice to see that this young 23-year-old kid, he said he's been vegan since he's 17. He was feeling very alone, and we talked, and I said, hey, I'll hook you up with my crew and take you around. He's been to the pig vigil and stuff, but he said he's been feeling very alone. And I said, well, don't worry, start hooking you up with some people. And I just always want to try to reach out to people, especially when they're new vegans and they feel alone, because I know what that feels like. And the second part was, what did you just say?
So the theme for the week.
I read the theme.
You read the theme, so that's what it's
I
about.
read it in the email.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. I'm glad you did, because I hope that people who come to this meeting take the time to read it, because that's really,
yeah.
it seems to kind of be tracking what's happening in the world anyway. It's just somehow it's lined up. So
Yeah.
and if it's not, it's close enough, so we can fake it if we need to, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding, is that what you were wondering? What the shift from intolerance? Well, you were saying about media intolerance, then you met a new vegan, and then you gave someone of your understanding to the guy who said he felt alone. We all know what that feels like, but you were saying how that's about as far as you got. And then you were saying, well, and so what is there more you want to say about intolerance to lay the groundwork for how you can maybe go beyond that and start to include more of the other humans' vision into your, or not vision, but experience into your vision, so you can start to maybe understand other ways to go about actualizing what's in your heart, I guess might be a way of saying it.
I don't really unfortunately, I don't have much tolerance anymore, really. I just I just feel like there's lots and lots of millions and millions of zombies just walking around. It's like The Walking Dead. My friend gave a reference to it, and I've never seen that television show. However, it used to be filmed where I was living in Atlanta. My friend is on the show, but I've never seen one episode. But she said this is just like zombies walking around asleep. And this whole virus thing, it's just out of control, because Bill Gates gave a speech April 3rd, 2015 about, oh, well, there's going to be another pandemic, and guys, we're not going to be ready for it. And I'm not a big fan of his per se because he's into vaccines, but I did think that's very interesting that he did that talk in 2015 of April 3rd, coming up almost 5 years ago. And it was a pretty good prediction. I mean, it was pretty accurate that people aren't prepared for this. I'm not really sure what else to say. I believe that this is a shift, though, that this is the shift to Vegan World 2026, because like a lot of people don't believe me when I say the first thing that has to happen is the financial system has to collapse. And that's what's happening. So yeah, I believe this is the shift. This is the shift for Vegan World 2026 for sure. I mean, it's going to happen, or else we're all going to die, and the world will still be here, and the animals that are left will still be here, but it'll be just like the Ice Age, where we're gone, which is fine, but we need to leave these animals alone. If we could just all leave this planet today and leave these animals alone, I would rather have that than trying to clean up this mess, because it's a mess. It's really affecting a lot of people, and it's not fair to those of us that are trying to do good, and every day we're fighting for justice. And now I just can't believe it. It's just like surreal. But yeah, I really hope we have a Vegan World 2026. I think we will. I just don't know if we'll be here.
Sarah, you're so real. I think you really express what's truly in every, if every vegan were really honest, I think that's pretty much it, you know. And it's so startlingly, awakeningly raw and real and clear and so sad and so horrible, and you know, and it's hard sometimes to swallow too, because of just the immensity of what we're facing. And I think on a very deep level, there's like this in the deep shadow of the collective unconscious of humanity, of those of us that are awakened to the vegan reality, this deep sense of guilt that, you know, almost wants to say we don't even really deserve to be here anymore. So if we're lost in the process, but the vegan world happens, you know, I mean, I can kind of relate to that, where that's coming from, and how that occurs. So I'll just jump into the sitta here. This is really a jungly night tonight. I feel like it's the most raw and down to earth meeting I've had yet with anybody, in going through the shadow and then the genius, which is the gift that we share, and then to me that was a gift you just shared in the end there, Sarah. That's why it just brought me out, and I had to kind of open up what I feel that seems to be in the heart of all vegans, you know, because that's not a bad thing. That's just the truth. And there's a lot of good in there too. There's a lot of beauty in there. So, you know, as I always do in every meeting, as strange as this might sound to anybody, I don't really care, is I open space to the higher, and I ask for help from above to open this present moment up so that we can all participate as a unified consciousness, each in our own uniqueness, in our own exquisite individuality, making a contribution to this. But at the same time, we're totally interconnected, because the space of the sitta is like we're one being with different, and each one of us is like a different, brilliant, scintillating facet of consciousness that shares a unique contribution that enriches the whole. So that's what the sitta space we open up is. And as I see this, I see all of us are living a life that is about giving. We all have to give a tremendous amount of ourselves and our energy and our time, whatever we can, really, if we get honest about it, since we're not other species, we are human, it's really about healing humanity. Because if we can't heal humanity, then humanity is not going to act and behave in a sane way. And if they don't act and behave in a sane way, then we're going to continue on the course we are going on, and we've already started on, and we all know where that's going. So I guess when I got it, when I understood that forgiveness is, it's not about that somebody did something bad and you're the like ultimate authority that's going to take away their feeling of badness by saying, okay, we forgive you. It's not about anybody else. It's not about anything else. It's about a whole, it's your literally your attitude toward life itself, toward every living creature, including humans. That all you can do is give. And if you reach a human who's really closed down, who's really hardened, who's really fixated in their way of being, who really feeds on violence, then maybe you have to like center yourself way deep down in your belly and come from a really strong place with who you are to that person in a way that allows you to give of yourself to that person. And everybody knows how to do that. It may not be the normal way you would act, because really when you step into the siddha, into your higher self, you have to kind of go beyond what you, in your selfish little worldview, perfect little vegan worldview, see as right, and open it up to what's right for the whole, so that this vegan vision can actually unfold, because it is the right, it is correct, it is the right vision. There's nothing in existence that wants everything to keep suffering. It just doesn't make any sense, because in all that suffering, there's no thriving. Thriving is just obviously the way to be for all life, for all creatures. So the best way we can support that thriving is by, no matter who we face, no matter how close they are, no matter how dark, no matter how insensitive, no matter how zombie-like, there's a way to tune into each person. Because if we really believe that our giving is you know, I mean, it's what we're doing, so it must be correct, because it's what we're doing. We humans, the ones that aren't hurting anybody anymore, who are walking the path of peace and talking it and thinking it, well, not perfectly. I mean, we vegans might want to, you know, punch a few meat eaters in the nose or whatever, but you know, it's getting there. So it's like, from our bellies, we can tune into anybody. We do it in these meetings every time. We tune into each other. Any human being you can tune into. It doesn't matter whether they're smart, stupid, meat eating, or not meat eating. Once you learn how to tune in and become one with a group of people in a collective space like this, and we accelerate our consciousness together, guess what? You're training to do that with anybody in the world. That's why I feel this aspect of Vegan World 2026 is a critical central element. Because when you can train this and do this with people, and even if it's in a space like this that's kind of, you know, very supportive of that, well, you got to start somewhere. I mean, when you grew up as a baby, you started in a very safe environment too. You didn't get raised, well, so maybe some babies get raised in the streets, but most don't. Most get raised in somewhat of a safe environment. So that's what we're doing here. We're training our Buddha natures in a safe, you know, in a baby Buddha incubator, safe environment here. Because to me, it's not about how much I could teach you or whatever. It's about how much we can all become able to share, you know, our highest highs and even our lowest lows. But even when we share our lowest lows, we do it in a respectful way. We own it. We take responsibility for our shadows. We don't dump them on other people. The main reason humanity's killing so much anyway is because they're not owning their shadows. They're projecting it out there on other things. That's the only way you can hurt anything else, is by, when you don't own your shadow, you put it on something else, and then you say, I have to kill that thing because it's the shadow, it's a shadowy thing and it's not good. And so logic tells me that things aren't good. I have to get rid of them. But that's a misplaced understanding, because it's your shadow. You in the first place are projecting on something, and it's a lens that makes you see it that way. The minute you take that lens off that, and in this case, I'll say that poor animal that you're calling a commodity, a livestock, you've forgotten that it's a living, breathing creature like you know, and you make that shift, and you go, wait a minute, I'm taking, because I'm projecting my shadow on something and not even taking responsibility for my own darkness. Then you can start to shift into, my life is forgiving. I want to forgive. I want to forgive everything. I want to forgive. If my life is forgiving, then even that hard-ass guy that just won't make a shift, I know I can tune into that space. And just by being who I am, without even mentioning one word of veganism or anything, if I can stand in that space with him and come from my space of giving with the intent to give, he's going to get something from it. And it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next day, it may not be next year, it may not even be for a couple of years, but something's going to change for the better in that guy sooner or later. And that's really the deeper understanding that goes across, that goes beyond time, beyond impatience, beyond patience, into that timeless dimension where it stretches out, where you open up really who you are, and it reaches into that person, into their future self, whether they're aware of it or not. If you touch that place from your essence and you touch their essence, it's going to create something. It's going to create a shift. It's going to make a change. Something real is going to come out of that. So that's a little bit about where I'm coming from with the Siddha of forgiveness. As I shift up into a bigger place of myself with that. I don't care who goes next. Lucy was going second, but anybody can go. Ellie, you don't have a sound. Okay, looks like Sarah might be going. No, you're just being visual. Lucy, are you there?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Did you feel like wanting to take a shot at forgiveness?
Yeah. I kind of had a few things floating around in my mind that all kind of related to it all, but sorry. Can I go in a few moments?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you got to do something.
Yeah, I've got to answer the door and I've got to.
That's what I figured.
A little bit. Sorry, 2 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah. See you in a bit.
Did you just hear? I just found out. I just actually drove to the beach. That's why I told you I had to be late to the call. I only live like 10 minutes from the beach, but still, I was like, I'm going to come to the beach so that I can just just chill out a little bit and relax and figure out what I'm going to do with my business since, look, a lot of my clients aren't needing me right now because they're staying at home and I'm a pet sitter. And my client that lives in New York, she has a place in Beverly Hills. I was supposed to pet sit for her starting next week for 3 weeks, but she had to cancel or push it up till May because New York is mess right now. She don't want to go in the mix of that. But I just heard from my friend Vanessa Marceau, who was at Vegan 2026 the first year. She's got a vegan wellness center called Allura Wellness, that Mayor Garcetti has now said that we have to have a stay at home, just like San Francisco and Berkeley, starting at midnight tonight. And I am not happy about this at all. I'm starting to be like, I don't know. I'm just not happy about this because my living situation is where I live is not so great because I live with a disgusting person. She is the coronavirus embodied, but she's vile and disgusting and she makes you sick. So yeah, she's like the coronavirus. But I mean, that's just me being nice. I could say a lot worse things about her, but I won't. But she's vile and gross. But yeah, no, I just, how long is this going to last? I've got like a lot of things going on, like activism, trying to save animals. And we have plans to do this. And now this mayor guy is saying that we can't go out except for to like get food or this is ridiculous.
Well, Sarah, this is the time, obviously, if we can't do that, then we got to do other things. It's like, if we can't use the tool, if we can't use the tool, which is activism, then maybe we can now sharpen the tool a little bit and make it even better by doing these kind of things and getting together and working with our consciousness and where we're at in our consciousness with the different things that are happening to us in our life, and as always, is it getting you what you want or other things happening? Like if we set it up right now that because we have to stay in our space, that we have to stop our activism. To me, what I do right now with other activists like this online, where I help people to become more meditative, to kind of give them some sort of regeneration for all the exhaustion that's happening to them out there in their activism activities and coming up against all that resistance. I mean, to me, that's my activism. that's how I do it almost all the time now. And I as you know, I went with you to a disruption. So it's like I know how to do those kind of things too. I have no problem with those kind of things. To me, that's like the easy part. The hard part is how do I become more and more a living embodiment of peacefulness, not just in my actions and not just in caring for other beings, but how do I start doing it in ways that make people that meet me want to start, maybe without even realizing it, become more attracted to what this veganism is all about if they're not yet there with it. And how do I make them start thinking about vegan things? How do I get it into their head too? So it's not just something you do, but it's also a way that you feel about stuff, and it's also a way you think about how you see things, right? So that to me is the challenge, and that's why I started these meetings, because I just saw that I love vegan people. I love being around them. I love the energy. But not all vegans are really that great or that nice of people. Sometimes a lot of them I'm better than everybody else. I'm holier than thou. And that's something I experience in my spiritual path. And it tends to chase people away and create more people that want to do the opposite of what you're doing than it does people that want to do what you're doing. And to me, that's counterproductive, because I really do want the world to go vegan. I don't want them to see that I'm vegan, but they get pissed off because I point out how they're not vegan in a way that's not very loving to them. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean I want to be, like one of these spiritual teachers that, comes across as all lovey, that I love everybody kind of thing. Because the truth is, I mean, on some level, yeah, I do. When it comes to the spirit of people, the essence of people, that thing we share when we reach that beautiful space in these meetings. And sometimes I appreciate the genius in people's, and sometimes I think it's a little quirky or freaky or whatever. And the shadows are always a challenge with anybody. Anybody's, closed down and I'm right, screw the rest of you kind of attitude that shadows come from. So I don't pretend that that I'm just this love everything, love everybody, it's all perfect. It ain't, but then I want to understand, where I want to really be open to people and where I don't want to be really open to people. And if there's places where I don't want to really be open to people because they're just stupid in those places, then I'm going to try and appeal to their higher nature. I'm going to try and come at them from a different angle, and then they can figure out what to do with that place in themselves that turns people off, Because if I go up against that place in them that turns them off, in the end, I just walk away with my finger, my middle finger up and a little bit of dust cloud, and nothing got accomplished, which I can do easy because I can be a really pissed off guy. Because I'm a martial artist, it's not a problem to get in touch with tons of anger and move it too if I want to. But that just really doesn't get anything done unless people are paying me money because they want to learn that and be a black belt. That's a different story. But other than that, there's no right reason for doing that kind of stuff, really.
But the thing is that I'm not talking about doing disruptions. I'm just talking about doing activism in general, because what's happening now is this is, to me, a way to shut out and say, shut up. We don't want to know the truth. We don't want to know the truth. Just stay in your home. Because they're not closing down the slaughterhouses right now. Those trucks are still coming every night. And they said that they can't close the slaughterhouses down. They need to leave them open. That was a blanket statement. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that wants to stay at home. I don't do well staying at home. I don't like being isolated. I don't want to stay at home. I want to be with my friends. I want to be doing my job. I want to be doing activism and educating people as much as possible. And just, this is putting a huge damper in us helping get these animals liberated. I understand there's a lot of places shutting down. That's great, like the horse racing tracks and all that, but this is just a mess.
So what do you do, Sarah, when Mother Nature puts her foot down and says, you got to stay home? And you're working for Mother Nature, obviously, because you're not hurting any beings anymore. So do you see the contradiction in all that? So what are you going to do with that? How are you going to deal with that? Because you got to deal with it.
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now when I came to the beach. Because I'm just like, this is not cool, because I don't have a significant other that I live with that I can, because everybody that I know that's got girlfriends and boyfriends or husbands and wives, partners or whatever, they're all together. So they're fine with this lockdown because they're together. But I'm just not fine with this lockdown at all. I'm going to resist it.
Well, it seems that, that would be a natural thing for you to do anyway, because since I've known you and heard of some of the things you do, and also done some things with you, and I wasn't just talking about disruptions. I've done all kinds of other activism
Yeah,
things,
yeah, for sure.
you know. Anyway, so we won't go into all that, but right now I'm going to let Lucy share if she wants about forgiveness, and then we'll get back to what you were talking about and try to bring where you're coming from into I'm going to get where you're coming from into forgiveness one way or another. I don't care how we do it, because everything is possible to forgive. So go ahead, Lucy, if you feel like it.
I don't know exactly how it relates to forgiveness, but I guess I just wanted to especially
Doesn't
share my feeling or my sense that that this is a phase that we're going through right now, and it's kind of a perfect opportunity for us to be doing this kind of thing, to be working on ourselves, to be working on like dealing with our shadows collectively, dealing with our shadows as individuals, as activists, as non-vegans. Like everybody is just being forced, like the whole world is on lockdown. Everyone is in the same boat pretty much. And there are some positive things that are coming from it, but I think the biggest positive that I'm seeing, or that I feel like it will be, is being forced to really sit with ourselves and look at what is effective for us, and start healing in ways as well, and healing each other and helping each other heal and become more effective for a future situation that I think could either go two ways, I feel like. And this is just me. I don't know, take it or leave it. I just feel like this phase is a phase. Then probably everything is just gonna kind of go back to normal, but nothing is ever gonna be the same again. It's never gonna be the same. There's gonna be a level of consciousness that's been brought into people's lives because of all of this, and there's going to inevitably be so many more people who are vegan because they've realized, I've been stocking up on rice and chickpeas. I'm probably going to be like, I know I'm going to be fine on vegan food, on plants, for much longer than I am on relying on dead animals. And yes, the slaughterhouses are still going and everything. And unfortunately, there are still so many animals who are still being killed, and it's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking. But I think a lot of people are going to be realizing these things kind of themselves, and through everybody talking about all this stuff online and spreading awareness and raising consciousness on so many different levels, that those people will eventually be on our side. I feel like through this whole thing, we're all kind of coming together, and it's creating more connections between activists in many ways. It's creating more connections between families who have to spend more time together. They don't have time generally to spend together when they're working like crazy. And it is causing divisions, and isolation is awful. But at the same time, I think it will, if we get past this phase, I feel like it will bring so many more numbers to our movement, and for us to be strengthened, and for us to be more effective through looking at ourselves and thinking about things more deeply, meditating on everything, being creative, bringing other ideas into the activist space and doing things a bit differently. We strengthen up, we power up, and then for the next phase, then either it's like, because I feel like something else is going to come up. It's this, there'll be something else a bit further down the track after everybody's kind of gone back to their kind of normal day-to-day lives for a little bit.
Yep.
And we realize, no, we can't be living that way. It's absolutely destructive. I hope that this is it, and that this is just like the first kind of close wave of being like isolated and separated, and then we can kind of come back together and do more work sooner rather than later. But I don't have that much faith in humanity to immediately move into that. I think there's going to be a big phase of pushback and capitalism and all the all the human darkness that is coming out through all of this, I have a feeling that will kind of come back more into play, and then we just have to bring as much more light into it as we possibly can, because it'll either go into World War III, or it'll go into everybody just using art and creativity and light and higher consciousness to shift into that next phase. Because this is the Great Awakening. This is the shift. This is the beginning of it. And we've been working towards this for so long, but now I feel like this is the start. And it's going to be massive. And we just have to make it a positive thing and bring the consciousness up with us. So I don't know if that's, it's not necessarily related to forgiveness, but maybe it's sort of, again, bringing it back to what I was saying, how it relates to my life is forgiveness of myself for being impatient, forgiveness of myself for being intolerant of, everything. And I do still definitely have that. I'm very, I feel like I outwardly project a very tolerant view in general. But at the same time, I'm driven by, I guess, it's just the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of peace for the innocent who are just don't generally get a look in. But forgiving myself for my impatience and forgiving those around me for not quite knowing, not being able to read my mind, because what I'm doing, like, I need to be able to ask people for help, specific help, and say, look, you have these skills. None of us are doing anything right now apart from being online. Like, if we can't work, we may as well use this for the betterment of activism and for the animals through that. So that's what I'm focusing on is Paradise Rising as my group, just building it up and allowing myself some space to breathe for a couple of days, because it's just been really, 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 really heavy, as it has been for everybody. But I'm just, getting to a place now where I'm understanding that other people don't know what I need from them. So now I can be more, I feel like I just need to just do the work, but also be able to delegate more effectively and ask for help more effectively. So it's kind of where I'm coming to.
Thanks, Lucy. That kind of summed up a lot of things in one go there. And I think it still stays with the purpose of, what the theme of this meeting. I kind of want to open something up, because you made a kind of hinted at something there that I think what I want to say is, we can have a theme for the meeting because it's nice to train ourselves in understanding our human genome, and all the keys that make it up. So each week we can do that and we can have fun with that, but we can also just get real and go totally off of that. As long as whatever you're taking, you own it, like, and say, this is the biggest resistance I had to my life in the last week that's really bugging me. And you said it's really heavy. I mean, that says it all to me right there. That's the shadow that we're all eating right now in one way or another. But that we also take the opportunity in this meeting that to just keep bringing more light and awareness and love into whatever we're bringing into this meeting, however we're sharing ourselves, because that naturally in itself will shift us from the shadow to the genius to the higher self if we do that. So that's what I try to constantly maintain, even if whether we stay on the theme or not is really, to me, not 100% important, because I don't want to be like any of the other meetings. I don't want to have rules that make people feel like the very rules themselves are just making it like that they're keeping everything from moving. It makes things take so much longer when you have to do that. Adds a whole other, a whole other dimension to something that if you're just owning your experience and being present, you don't need it. You can just okay, Sarah, I see you have to go. I loved you being here, and I always love whatever you do, so it doesn't matter. And a lot, I say what I'm saying for you too. It's not like we ever have to stay on the theme. I just want people to be real and bring a lot of more light and energy and awareness to whatever's going on with them, because that in itself will accelerate our consciousness, and that's all I care about. So the theme is just for fun. In case we run out of stuff, we can always go back to the theme, can always keep it going, and it's useful because it teaches us about our human condition. Is there anything you wanted to say before you left, Sarah, since you have to go? And when Sarah goes, we'll end the recording of the meeting. We'll go into what we were going to do afterwards.
No, I would like to stay on the meeting. I just need to drive so I can listen in.
Oh,
I guess I'm done driving. I could get back on. But there's another meeting also that I'm missing from DXE. We have from 7 till something. I'll probably miss it, but it's okay because I committed to this first. So there's just so that's the thing, is everybody's meeting online now, so everything's like overlapping. For me, it's overwhelming because I have like 7 meetings today already online that I've done. That, you know, it's a lot, but it's okay. I'm really glad that I listened to Lucy. She was incredible.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Where do you live, Lucy?
Where do I live? I'm based in Sydney. Last year I was in Europe and the UK, but now I'm back here, and this is where I want to mostly be centered, is the East Coast.
Yeah. I just thought you might live in Sydney. My friend's from Adelaide, but yeah, I was in Sydney many times, but yeah, I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah,
Cool.
Sydney's great. The activist scene is this is my home, my activist home, really. I started activism in Melbourne, but didn't feel as comfortable there as I do in Sydney, so I came back here. I travel a lot, and like you, I do a lot of animal caring, like animal sitting. So I'm looking after, I do house sitting as my job and my accommodation. So now that people aren't going away, they can't travel, I'm kind of stuck with my accommodation as well. Like, I don't really know where I'm going to go. I kind of feel like I just have to go into the bush and camp until I can actually find somewhere a little bit more stable. It's a bit,
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good. At least, I mean, this will be blowing over soon, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope things kind of, yeah, like I said, I don't think anything's ever going to be the same again, but at least it's it will have more stability, less confusion anyway. Where are you based, Sarah?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did Cube of Truth at in Sydney before on Pitt Street, which has changed a lot there. Since I used to go there a lot since 2001. My friend used to live on Pitt Street, and now it's totally different. But yeah, I started going to Shenzhen after that in Guangzhou. But I don't want to go back to China. That's for sure. Nothing against China. I just don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I really don't want to go back to Sydney actually either, because I had a terrible experience there recently. But yeah, it's just because they have so many ads on the sides of the buses for meat and stuff, and I just can't. It was in my face all the time with the Uggs and stuff, and I just didn't like seeing that. I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff, but you know.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I was hoping to get to LA this year. I was actually planning a trip to the States in July to get to Portland. Well, starting with LA, because there's just so many calls to LA this year, and the end of last year it was like, you got to go to LA, you got to go to LA, you got to go to LA. Like, okay, I'll figure that one out. But yeah, I can't really plan too much now. Don't really know when we're going to be able to do international traveling. So yeah, I'm just focusing on Australian activism and traveling here, and hopefully running some workshops gradually in person, or hosting other people to run workshops and things for the activists more, and bringing creativity and art into outreach through festival kind of spaces. So being more in the bush, and instead of street activism, it's like bush activism, and bringing the animal liberation, anti-speciesist message to people who go to these festivals, because they are the spiritual people, like you're saying, Dharmendra, the people who are quite, the spiritual communities. A lot of them are open-hearted and open-minded enough to take on the message. Some of them aren't, just like the rest of the world. But that's the aim for, I guess, at least this year and going forward, is to do my best to bring that message to a group of people who don't necessarily get it very often, not in the way that they kind of talk, or that's sort of accessible to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. So at this point, I think that was cool. And both of you too, I think, you're both like really incredible role models of what activism should look like, I think, because of just from what I've seen of both of you in different scenarios and stuff. And so I really honor that. And I also just in my own life experience, having been always, when I was younger, always been a doer, do it, get it done. But then as I guess you could say since 40, the last 20 years, life has forced me, almost like this coronavirus, has forced me to go in more and to find ways to find the other side. And I've always been inward. I've always been in. I could always go in. I have a very good relationship with meditation and stuff, but it's just not the way I tended to relate with others a whole lot or express myself a whole lot. I just kept it to myself. But so now bringing it out with others, I think right now a lot of what humanity needs, and I see it just in the general response, even through veganism, I think a lot of this going in could help people a lot right now. Because everything that's happening on the planet is as a result of doing, and never going in, ever. Mm-hmm. That's why everything is the way it is. Because when you just go out and out and out and out, you forget who you are, you forget what you are about, you forget what other beings are to you, you forget the meaning that you share with each other, you forget everything, and you just chase whatever it is you think you're supposed to go after. And it could be anything given this world. I mean, anything from the worst to the best, but I see that when people start to go in, well, a lot of what happens when people start to go in is they get scared and they run away, and they get defensive, or they start going into escapist modes, or they start fragmenting, or they put things in different categories and get all fragmented. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people do when they start confronting the truth, that's inside them, and it's like people open up to it a bit, maybe their life gets a little better, and that's all they want, and they just forget about all this, and they go back to whatever it was they were pursuing again, going out, which tells me that they got a little bit of it, but they didn't really get all of it. And I guess the thing that is really the hardest thing to get across to people is that if you really want this beautiful and peaceful world, then you have to become that. You have to find that first. You have to find that so intensely that it literally comes out your pores 24/7. So that when you start relating with people, but at the same time, you got to be really savvy. You got to know how to relate to all kinds of different people from all kinds of different angles and moods and everything. And you got to be able to change on a dime to respond to people in different ways, So it's not anymore the yogi who just sits there all cross-legged with his hands in the little circles and just, and has all these perfect answers. No, you got to be out there on the street with the activists and, and in the restaurants and, on the buses and the trains and wherever, and out in the fields. And you got to be able to talk to anybody from anywhere now. And you got to be able to somehow relate to them in their language. You got to be able to stand with them. You got to be able to stand in harmony with them first. And let them be who they are and receive that, because if you can't even receive somebody, how are they going to receive what you have to say, So there's just so many elements coming in, that we're having to deal with. And I feel like because we vegans are in a very unique position right now, where nature's going to start unmistakably showing the world what it's doing by these diseases and stuff. And all of us vegans going, yeah, we understand, we know. Nature can't tolerate this anymore. And we understand exactly why this is happening. We give of our lives. Our lives are forgiving. We're constantly giving because we see where it's all being taken from. It's an imbalance. we've decided to redress the imbalance and make it balanced again. So in that very move, we're forgiving. We're doing the kind of forgiving that is real forgiveness, you know, because the minute you start giving instead of taking, you've already forgiven yourself. You're not bad anymore. You're good. Now you're giving, you know. So it's like it's an action. It's an embodiment when you do a siddha. It's not a I don't know, whatever. It's something you have to embody, and when you embody it, it moves you to do things, you know, that are the right things. And so this time, you know, this time when we have to all be so isolated, but isn't it funny that these Zooms I create with Jamin like 6 months ago, the guy who does the 24-hour block party on Radish. Him and I got together like 6 months ago after the Vegan World 2026 conference. Amira knew somebody we just lived up down the street from it, but we were working, so we couldn't actually be there, but we were watching it on Jane Unchained, so it was no big deal. But anyway, about a week before, Jane and Sailesh and Jamin and a bunch of other people got together and did this online summit where they started talking about climate healing and stuff. And that's where I saw Jamin the first time. And I said, I like where he's coming from. He's got this thing called collective intelligence. And I said, it's not the same thing as accelerated collective evolution, but there's a lot of similarities we could relate. And so during the last day of that Vegan World 2026, where everybody came from all over the world, including Sarah, just up the street from where I live to meet with Shailesh Rao, and everybody started to create this Vegan World the second year of it actually, because it was just last October. Amira knew somebody that was there who got a hold of Jamin, and Jamin said, Dharmendra wants to meet you, and we met. And then we started to discuss this stuff, and I started to do my thing with him, and we did like a dozen or so sessions, and it exploded as a result of that. You know, he doesn't come to the meetings anymore, and as much as I love him, I think he got what he wanted out of it, which was just to, you know, get him lined up with what he wanted to do, you know. But I mean, there's deeper steps you can take to become liberated, you know, to become a liberated being, and then eventually become a bodhisattva and share that and help everybody else become liberated, you know, which is my emphasis. I think it's yours too, if I can speak for you, Lucy. I think you're kind of coming from that place also. I think Sarah is too, but I think she sees herself more as an activist. But I think there's so much to you, Sarah. It's amazing. There's so much you do. You don't really have to say it all in as fancy a ways as I might say it, but just the way you are and what you come across with and how real and honest you are. I mean, I don't know. I really feel like you have this. Really feel like you're a bodhisattva too. You're here to spread compassion, you know, love and awareness. That's what I get from you, Sarah. Totally. You know, I mean, just in who you are.
Thank you. All right, guys, I'll be back. I just need to run in to do one thing and I'll be back. But what you said actually just now about, there was one thing that was incredible that you said that actually really resonated with me, was if we want to see that peace, we have to be the peace that we want to see. That's really good. I mean, that's a really good wake-up call. Like, that's good. Be what you want to see. Yeah.
I like the way you just said that. Be what you want to see. I like it. I had to remember that. Thank you, Sarah. I know you get it, girl. I know you get it.
Yeah, I just have a lot of like anger right now of this whole thing, because I feel like it's not our fault that this is happening, and that it's just unfortunate because there's so many people that just need a wake-up call. Yeah. But that's good, because I'm going somewhere in just a second. I just have to run in real quick to do something. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's about 20 people I can give a quick wake-up call to.
Go for it, girl.
Yeah, all right, I'll be back. I'm actually leaving my phone in the car. I'll be back.
Okay, we'll see you when you get back.
It doesn't mess up. All right, thanks.
Yep. So anyway, I think on that note, we kind of reached a nice place there with the, you know, be the peace you want to see. So I think at that, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to stop recording now. Mm-hmm.